So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I would like first to thank the Minister of Finance, Transparency International Bulgaria, the Basel Institute on Governance, the American Chamber of Commerce in Bulgaria, the Swiss Bulgarian Chamber of Commerce for their kind invitation to an important conference on an important topic, which is collective action. So when I prepared for this short speech on this topic, and from an international viewpoint, not from a Bulgarian viewpoint, a question came to my mind. Why is it that we are still talking about collective action in 2023, so 24 years after the start of those actions in Bulgaria or elsewhere? Is there something that we missed? Is there something that we didn't do well and where we need to improve? And I think that we need to remember the goal that we are pursuing. And that goal is to fight and defeat the global economy of corruption, because there is a global economy of corruption, which is harming common good. There is a global economy of corruption that comes from the small bribes paid locally and that goes into the massive financial flows that are crossing borders for money to be invested secretly in real estate, luxury cars, capital markets, very often in France or elsewhere. So that is the global economy of corruption. And that global economy of corruption, how does it work? When people save money on indispensable construction materials for a badly built school, these illegal savings are fueling a company's profit. They are also fueling bribes. And when those bribes are big enough, they are directly going into these illicit international flows. And when they are small, they may go to low-level civil servants who are insufficiently paid so that it allows mismanagement of the state, embezzlement of public funds that in turn go to the massive cross-border illicit flows. And that global economy of corruption is an economy founded on trust, as you said, trust between the culprits or the corrupt. But this global economy of corruption is not an economy that creates economic value. It makes victims. The victims of a badly built school, those that are no longer protected by a failed state. So it is an economy that does not create value. It is an economy that destroys social value. And it is an economy that is grounded on secrecy. And why that? Because if it was well known and publicized, it would be rejected by almost all the people. So if we want to defeat this economy of corruption, we want to defeat secrecy. And in order to fight and defeat secrecy, we want to foster open communication on common interest. And that is what a collective action is about. Open communication on common interest. So there are various forms of collective action, like civil society organizations, monitoring public tenders, as Transparency International Bulgaria did for the Trachea Highway some years ago, or on the use of European funds. You may also have several bidders to a public contract that agree on things that they have to do, on things that they don't have to do, and those are the integrity pacts. And there is a Bulgarian model of integrity pacts that's been developed by Transparency International Bulgaria since 2011. You may also have agreements at the industry level or nationwide, like what TI Bulgaria, again, is trying to do in the sectors of energy, defense, healthcare, or through the Business Integrity Club. And it is also the role of the state to fight corruption. I am thinking of the law to protect whistleblowers that was enacted in May this year in Bulgaria, and that has now to be enforced and implemented. So a lot of things have been done over the past 20 years. A lot of regulations have been passed. There are even regulations in a number of countries that are forcing companies beyond a certain size to implement anti-corruption programs. You also have now regulations that are targeting a very important thing, which is beneficial ownership transparency. And that's important because what do we want to avoid? Also in a public tender, we want to avoid that the same person be at both sides of the table. You know, the person who is deciding on a deal, on a contract, and the person who is behind the company that is benefiting from that contract. And you manage to avoid that when you know those that are behind the company, either beneficial owners or minority shareholders, and that has to be known nationwide, and that's the reason why we want to have registries that are open to the public, and that has also to be known tender by tender for all bidders to a public tender. So that's what's been achieved, and I would like to insist on a few issues at the end of this short intervention. The first issue is that there are a number of companies that are difficult to reach out to, difficult to engage with. I'm thinking of the small and medium-sized enterprises, which often lack the resources needed to work on our issues, to participate in collective actions. Hence, the crucial importance of the industry associations, of the chambers of commerce. So that's very important to reach out to all those companies. I also like to say a few words about other types of companies, which are the state-owned enterprises. I will not criticize the state-owned enterprises per se. It would be difficult for a French. And in a number of countries, there is this common feeling, this common idea that there are a number of economic activities that have to be undertaken under the public umbrella. And that's very fine. What is less fine is when a state-owned enterprise is managing vast amounts of money under state-owned secrecy, feeling that it's covered by state-owned secrecy and there is no room for transparency or collective action or integrity pacts or whatever. When a state-owned enterprise is organizing a public tender, it has to be governed by the same principles of transparency, integrity, collective actions, integrity pact, as when the state is doing that. And I would like to conclude with probably the biggest threat to us, which is today indifference. There are a number of ministers, governments in many countries, of CEOs of corporations, including big corporations, that are now indifferent to our issues because they feel that now everything is in the law, and they tend to say that the only thing that matters is to comply with law. And they are no longer active, and that's a threat, and that's probably the reason why we have not achieved as much as we hoped to achieve, and that's probably the answer to the question that I was asking at the beginning of my intervention. So we have this indifference, and that is dangerous because it is confusing the letter with the spirit. It is not because the letter now is in the law that we want to forget the spirit. And the spirit has to be the personal motivation of everybody within an administration, everybody within a company, starting with the top, because you are not those that need to be convinced this morning in the room, nor are those who may be watching us through Zoom or I don't know if, yes, okay. So, or those that will watch the video. Those that we want to convince are those outside the room, who are also making decisions, who are deciding on deals, on tenders, and who may be exposed to corruption risks. Those are the ones that we want to convince, so that a collective action is not only a collective action between civil society, governments, companies, but also a collective action within an administration, a collective action within a company, starting with the top to defeat the global economy of corruption. Thank you very much for your attention.